You're listening to Power Femme Radio. This is a podcast where ladies come together and try to share their opinions and empower each other to be better women in society.
Did he just say try? You're listening to Power Femme, where women don't try, we do. Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Power Femme podcast. I am so thrilled you're here. Today's guest is Meredith Baker, and she talks all about fearless creativity, setting up boundaries so that you can really excel in that thing that you really want to do. I know you're going to love this episode. Let's dive in. Yeah! Okay. Meredith Baker is a singer-songwriter, breathwork facilitator, and co-founder of the LA-based experience company called More of That. Through her signature methodology combining breathwork, visualization, and guided inquiry, she's helped hundreds of high performers achieve their goals, all while tapping into her own creative genius. She believes multi-passionate creatives have the ability to let their North Star be the thing that connects the dots between passions.
Wow. What an amazing intro. I'm like, I need that copied for my LinkedIn.
Yes, I will copy and paste and send to you.
And every bio needed from here on out.
It's true though, you really are, you're so good at really allowing what inspires you to guide you, I feel like, just in everything that you do in your life. Guys, Meredith was actually also on the Hustle and Flow podcast way back when. She's actually episode 1 of, I think, season 5, or maybe season 4, don't remember. So if you want even more on that, definitely go check out that podcast episode.
Yes. Well, yeah, no, I'm excited to be talking to you today because I love that both of us are manifestor generators.
Yes.
For those of you who have taken human design. And I don't know about for you, but for many years, coming from an Ivy League background, I was like told to focus, do one thing, which there is a lot of value to that. But being like a multi-passionate individual, you feel like some parts of yourself are like being suffocated or suppressed. Yeah. And so getting that reading and then hearing that my actual zone of genius is being able to squeeze and move on, squeeze and move on, squeeze and move on. Different things that all kind of come together as stepping stones gave me a lot more permission to embrace those different sides of myself.
I love that. So, okay, what would you say are your main passions, the things that excite you the most?
So overall, I would say storytelling. Like, I love sharing stories. I love learning people's stories. Part of More of That, we started as storytelling potlucks, where kind of like the Moth, where we would send out a prompt and people would tell a 5-minute story around that prompt. And then my background actually is in human interest stories and journalism. So I got my master's in African studies and would spend time living in different places, learning from different cultures. And so now, flash forward as a coach, while I still pursue songwriting and screenwriting, I help other people literally own and share their stories and own all parts of their stories, like even their shame, even their shadow, while concurrently walking the walk, holding my feet to the fire, and like showing up for my creative stuff and addressing my creative blocks as they come too, which, as you know, it's like that balance between focus and
creativity. The desire to like want to move on to the next project.
Yeah.
So, okay, for those who are listening who don't know what human design is, can you give us like a little overview of what that is and why it's important to know?
Totally. Yeah, I know. I realize like sometimes in Venice we get so familiar with our personality tests and spiritual lexicon that we forget. So human design is kind of a reading almost based on your birth chart, the time you were born, where you were born, and it shows you how you kind of best operate in the world. So I actually truthfully only know about manifestor generators.
Oh yeah, there's like 4 different types of personality. There's generator, manifesting generator, reflector, and projector. Okay, got it. Yes.
And we're both manifestor generators. And I remember I got my reading, and the woman who gave it, told me, it was also at a time where I actually was running my beverage company. And she told me that like I'm meant to be like creative, and I operate with a little bit of like structure to set a container, but then having that permission within that container to kind of like throw things against the wall and see what sticks and then run with that. I wanted to create a brand, but then I was also sucked into doing all the operations part of it, all the fundraising. And so actually after getting my human design reading, amidst other personal development stuff I was doing that year, like going to the Hoffman process, which is an intensive week-long retreat, I made the decision to let go of the beverage company.
Wow.
And to stop teaching at yoga studios, and then to really dial in on coaching, my experience company, and my creative pursuits, which is still a lot, but less than it was.
Right. Oh my God. It is a lot. Yeah, I feel the same way. Like I feel like when I got my manifesting generator reading as well, I was just like, holy cow. It's so wild when you take a personality test. I mean, maybe I just like drank the juice and I believe in all the personality tests. I've done every single personality test that there literally is under the sun. And I feel like the human design one, like you said, just, it gave me so much permission. Like instead of fighting myself and beating myself up for like having so many different projects and different ideas on my plate, instead it just like allowed me to embrace that and realize like, no, I actually thrive when I have my hands in multiple projects. So it's like, that was a huge game changer for me. But still, even still, I have to catch myself, and I'm like, okay, I don't want to run too far with giving myself permission to like work on so many things, because at the end of the day, like, we all have 24 hours in a day. I shared this post on my story, and this athlete was talking about how we have 24 hours in a day. 8 of those hours are spent sleeping. You have to eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner, so that's 3 hours. So that's 11 hours out of your day. And then most people go to a job, like a main job that they have to pay for, or that they have to go to so that they can pay for their life. And that's typically a 9 to 5, an 8-hour gig. So right there, we're already at 19 hours. You only have 24 hours a day, right? And it's like you got to drive. So it's like, how can you expect to actually move forward in the things that you're super passionate about if you're only spread so thin?
Right. Yeah, and that's something that you and I talked about on our girls' weekend in Idlewild. That's something I really admire about you, knowing how hard it is for both of us multi-passionate people, and really like just dialing in on the podcast this year. And for me, what I've always had is like a North Star, like life mission statement that's kind of guided everything that I do, which is, I believe, like my personal legacy is, like I was saying earlier, helping people own and share their stories. And so whatever I take on, even if they seem somewhat unrelated or in a different field, does it serve my North Star, or does it take away? And if it takes away, then I let it go. And also, I have been getting better, though, you know, not until like more recently, just about prioritizing things and actually setting like milestones for things, at which point like I either hit it or reassess if it's something that I really want to do or something that I feel like I should be doing, and what's my level of excitement around it.
Ooh, we're getting onto something really good. If you've got something in your life that you're excited about, that I feel like is the biggest sign that it's your North Star and that's the direction to go. I feel like we get so caught up in the like, oh, but does it pay? And like, how much time is it? Like, you think so much about every little detail and every reason why it won't work out. But if you simply just followed your bliss, you'd be on the path to least resistance.
Totally. Well, yeah, I mean, that's like the funny thing right now is like when I coach people, and I coach both men and women, you know, we talk about like feminine and masculine energetics, and some of the more masculine energetics is like more of the hustle culture, and some of the more feminine energetics is listening to my intuition. Does this light me up? Using our emotions as a compass, and letting go of all the shoulds. Sometimes I have my clients start out by writing down all the shoulds before we get to the clarity of what they actually want to be doing, because the shoulds, like whatever our conditioning, has like blocked what we actually want to do. Looking at where we're maybe too far one way, like too far in the masculine, too much driven by the shoulds, and then what would actually light me up. And like I have people just write a list. I'll like set a 3-minute timer of everything that they're passionate about. And it can be personal or professional. And then writing out afterwards, like the common thread between those things, between those seemingly unrelated things. And then from there, we actually look at, well, why don't you feel like you could make money from that? What do you feel like is blocking you? And, oh, I'm not qualified, or I like couldn't possibly get paid for my creativity because my parents told me that I needed to get a real job. Or then we start to untangle the stories behind it, because like the more perfect blend of feminine and masculine energy around that would be, I get paid to do what I love. Yeah. And the more I do what I love, the more I get paid.
So Meredith, what are some of the shoulds that come up in your sessions with your clients, just so that maybe somebody who's listening, they can know if they're shoulding all over themselves, or right? Because like, if you feel bad and you're like angry about where you are in your life, sometimes that just means you're out of alignment. And like, some people really ignore that and they continue on to this path of what they think that they should do. So maybe you could share some shoulds that have come up so that people can just see like, oh shit, I'm shoulding all over myself.
Okay, I love that you said that, because I actually made a reel back in the day about shoulding all over yourself. Shoulds happen. But yeah, so a lot of shoulds deal with like, you know, how they grew up in what particular society. Like, oh, I should find a stable job. I should go into this industry because it's the most secure. I should want to climb the ranks here. I should get another certification because until I do, then I will be an imposter. I should, so it's a lot of kind of like more like ladder climbing, like taking the traditional like societal steps, like more achievement based. And it's so interesting because some clients I've worked with have had like major accolades and awards, or have also come from Ivy League schools, or on paper like seem, you know, like they should be so happy. Right. And there is a disconnect. I'm actually reading Martha Beck's book. She's Oprah's life coach.
Oh, what's it called?
It's called The Way of Integrity.
Okay.
And she's saying like, we become out of integrity when we splinter parts of ourselves, when we're not acting in total alignment. And so that's where like depression or regret or even anxiety or fatigue come from when you're showing up to work every day not feeling excited or feeling the existential dread. It's usually when you're allowing the shoulds to run your life rather than what you're truly passionate about. The way Martha describes it, it's funny because we just heard a plane overhead and it's actually about planes, is that you wouldn't, you know, if a plane wasn't in full integrity, if one of the parts was off, you wouldn't take off, even if it was a small part, because it would be unsafe. And so of course you would spend the time to fix the plane to get into perfect alignment. Wow. And she's saying what we're actually doing, you know, the stakes aren't like 5,000 feet up in the air, 3 miles up in the air, but you know, we splinter these parts of ourselves and we compartmentalize, and we become so detached from our true north that we don't even know where to begin when we want to look for what we're passionate about or what lights us up. And that's why people feel overwhelmed, and oftentimes why people also even like say they want coaching or say they want to do personal development, and they'll like dip their toes and then they'll get scared because it's almost like they're so afraid of what it would reveal or of how it would untangle their lives, or it might bring up things that completely pivot their life, and just the thought of it becomes overwhelming.
Yeah, it's like a radical release of everything that you know how to do in terms of operating and creating your life. So it's like a total mindset shift of like, oh, it's like a scary thing. Oh, you know what? This is the perfect time for a quote that you actually shared that I love. I actually live by this, Meredith, and I would love for you to elaborate on it. So Meredith says, right before we expand into the next version of ourselves, the universe always gives us a test to make sure that we can operate at that level.
Oh my gosh. Yes, thank you. This was one of my, for my humble TikTok following, it was one of my videos that went viral. But yeah, right before we expand into the next version of ourselves, the universe always gives us a test. And what I mean by that is it's so easy to have revelations when we're, you know, quietly with ourselves meditating or having a peak experience at a ceremony or at a retreat. And we have this revelation of how our highest self will be. And then we come home, and then something triggers us, right? And then what oftentimes is, it's like we're flying at a new altitude. Something triggers us, there's turbulence, and if we don't want it badly enough, if we're not having as much conviction that we can operate at this high level, we'll be like, I'm just gonna go down to the lower level again. And then you start to think, shit, change isn't possible. Like, I guess that's not meant for me. I guess I don't have access to it. And so sometimes people can become even more depressed because they saw access to how they could be, but they're not yet ready to put in the steps to get there. So I like to remind myself and tell my clients, like, when you are tested, when you are triggered, that's actually when you need to step up and need to prove to yourself and do the hard thing in the moment and walk the fire and keep taking step after step, because eventually those tests will stop and the universe, or what I like to call your highest self, like your internal highest self, is like, okay, you're ready to operate at this level. But it's kind of like when you think about like getting another belt in martial arts, or getting to the next level of Mario 64 to save the princess. Like, the challenges become harder and harder, and you're tested to see if you can operate at that level.
Wow. That's amazing, Meredith. I feel like anytime most people start a new venture, it's so normal to fail, like, at first. You know what I mean? If you're starting a new dream, or you're starting, you want to write a script, or you want to start that new business, or you want to start dating again, as simple as that, we have one moment that feels like a setback, but really all it is just a lesson. And it's a choice in that moment to look at it as, okay, this is failure and I'm not meant to do this. Or, like you said, this is my opportunity to step up and grow and expand into that more full version of myself.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I love that you say that, because I like to say every no is a stepping stone, building the pathway to your throne.
Ooh.
And yeah, it's the idea of that. It's only a failure if you don't take any wisdom from it, if you don't learn from it, if you don't grow from it, if you stay knocked down. Otherwise, it's a stepping stone. Otherwise, it's wisdom, and whether or not it's something that you carry on with in that exact direction, or it helps you redirect your course. Wow. If you have the mentality, this is happening for me, then you can use anything to alchemize your growth. And keep in mind, I'm not also saying that like something super shitty happens and you're like, this is happening for me. Like, first allow those motions to come up, and allow yourself the space to be like, I'm having a really bad day.
Yeah.
Let myself sit in that. Let myself process it. For me, I go for a car ride and like scream in the car, scream into my pillow, or have like a crying night. Yeah. And then, okay, after I've given myself that space, what are the lessons here? And what is my next step? Yeah. And oftentimes in that, I'll do this, or I'll encourage my clients to do a meditation where you envision your highest self responding instead of being triggered and reacting. And in that response is where our growth happens, and that's how our life changes. In fact, Viktor Frankl?
Yeah, of course.
Who wrote Man's Search for Meaning? He has one of my favorite quotes of all time, which is, in between stimulus and response, there's a space. And in that space is a choice. And in that choice is our freedom. And so what it really comes down to with triggers, with creativity, with everything, is knowing that when we are about to fall into an old habit or an old way of being, and asking, what would a new choice look like here? And making that tiny shift that day, even though it doesn't seem like it, that is going to create new neural pathways, new memories, new data points for your brain that, oh yeah, I can do this. Change is possible. And that turn shapes your life and allows you to take bigger swings creatively, allows you to show up in a new way in the world.
Yeah. And don't forget too, like, when you overcome the resistance, because like, I just went through the hardest year of my life, and like, while I'm going through it, I'm like, why me? Why? You know what I mean? But it is all happening for you. Even on your shittiest days, it's all happening for you. But that's the thing, that's the key, is like to allow it to happen and not be in resistance to it, like not ignore it. And then I love what you just said, just about like the action. Like, no, that's when you step up and you take action. That's when you step up and you actually take on the challenges. Like, when you overcome that, that's how you start to create confidence. And you're like, yeah, I overcame that. Like, that thing sucked, but I stepped up, and guess what? I'm better for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think like what you were saying too something I've deeply admired in you this year is giving yourself that time and space to heal. And really in that allowing, like, I've seen this beautiful like blossoming of you into this,
Thank you.
Heidi in her full self, like power femme taking on the world.
Thank you.
And I really, it was really a beautiful thing to see, and a reminder to me to also slow down and leave that spaciousness of allowance.
Allowance is so powerful. I mean, it's like, it's literally the universe is always, the world is always going to just do its thing. Like, and I have to remind myself that like we too are human beings, and like we are, like, we're just like the earth. Like, the earth is a living thing, and like the sun still shines every day. The sun comes up, and every night the sun goes down.
Yes.
And every day the birds are fed, and you know what I mean? And they have their shelter. Like, the world keeps on turning. And so, like, I found in this time of just, like, hard, I won't even call it resistance because I didn't resist it, but just, like, with my dad passing and just life being crazy, like, changed my career, lost a family member, like, moved, and just so many things happened. It's like, I really let myself allow. I went through a period where as I was changing my career, I was unsure of, like, what I was doing, or even at some points I was so sure that was the direction that I needed to go, but I had to actively allow life to happen in order to put me here. And that, I think, takes like real trust totally. In the universe. I mean, talk about faith. That's like taking steps forward consistently, not knowing when the step is going to be there. That's faith. Like, just trusting that the universe is going to put the step there. It's going to be there, but you have to take the step and allow yourself to just like let it reveal. And maybe it doesn't put the step there right away. Maybe that step comes 6 months later. It's never gonna be in our timing, right? Like, that's just the beautiful reminder, like, life's on its own time.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So much of what you said, I was like,
snaps. And also just like, life's a journey. Like, enjoy the ride.
Yeah.
Enjoy the ride. There are those really, like, when you're going up on a roller coaster and you're up, like, shit gets hard sometimes. You know what I mean? But you get to the top and then it's like a freaking breeze and it just goes by so fast, right? It's like, okay, like, how can I start to just enjoy the ride more?
Totally. There's like 5 things I want to touch on that you just said. Yes. But one of them being with in regards to trust. I like to say trust only exists in times of uncertainty. If something wasn't certain, you wouldn't need trust. And so what that allows for is like the magic, I believe, happens in the gray zone. And the reason we always, try to force things into black or white or control it is because it's predictable, it's consistent, and it creates like, habitual, like, psychological safety. But when we trust in ourselves, that means we know we've got us in times of uncertainty, which then allows us to exist in the gray area, which then gives like the seed spaciousness to actually grow. Which reminds me, I'm not going to say this quote right, but I was at Burning Man this year and we climbed inside this pyramid out in Deep Playa, which happened to be a cuddle dome on the inside.
Oh my God. And
there were quotes written on it.
Wait, pause before you do this. Can you explain what Burning Man is?
Yeah.
Because some people don't know.
Okay. So
it's that Venice bubble we're talking about here.
Yes.
Everybody here in Venice is like, we're in Venice, California, by the way. Everybody in Venice is like going to Burning Man and like, it's this really cool thing, but like, you just got back. So like, I want to hear what the heck it is.
Okay. Wow. Burning Man is an autonomous city that's created every year in Black Rock City in the desert in Nevada. So like hundreds of camps go, like 80,000 people. And it's a form of radical self-expression. It's not just a music festival. There's music there, there's art there, and everyone comes with offerings. And everything's meant to delight and surprise each other.
And there's no money.
And there's no money involved. So you pay for your ticket into Burning Man, and then everything there is a gift.
And so it's on the playa. What does on the playa mean?
Oh yeah, on the playa is like the beach of Burning Man, so it's shaped like a C, and then there's like all the camps are in like that letter C, and in the open space of it is where the art is. Like different, you bike, it's like 3 or 4 miles like around the circumference of Burning Man, and you bike out to these different art pieces. So it was like 3 a.m. My boyfriend and I and another couple were biking, and we saw a pyramid structure, which was one of the art pieces on the playa. And we climbed inside of it because we just thought it was a pyramid, but everything in the playa is meant to surprise and delight. We climbed inside of it, and there was a quote on it that's like, certainty is a prison so great that the people who try to create it don't even know they're imprisoned. And It's just about how when we try to create certainty or when we try to create things on our own timeline, we actually cage ourselves because then we don't leave space for allowance. We don't leave space for miracles, for the universe to delight and surprise us, which is funny because at Burning Man, that was a totally delight and surprise moment to climb into the pyramid. But then to read that quote is warning you of the opposite.
Yeah. What was your biggest takeaway from Burning Man?
So many. I'll just touch on like the most potent 2 or 3 and try to keep it short so I don't go on my whole Burning Man monologue. But I think the biggest thing was kind of what we were talking about with trust. I mean, Burning Man is like a playground. There's so many things you could be doing at any given time. And sometimes you're like, should I go there? Or there's this thing happening here. And it's like FOMO's playground because you could always be a million other places there. And so a big one was commit to where you are and leave space for magic to unfold. And what I mean by that is linger longer in a place. Don't just be like looking for the fun. Be the fun. Be the energy that you bring to that place and stay like a little bit longer than you usually would, because oftentimes that's when the connection happens. That's when you meet that person. That's when you have that conversation, because you're really just there with no expectation. You're not searching or seeking anything. And so it's a great breeding ground for that, and kind of tying back to what you were saying and what we were talking about with trust and uncertainty. It's like committing to yourself in that moment allows you to commit to the moment in general and commit to the people that you're talking to.
Wow, that's really good.
Yeah.
Say that one again. It was commit to where you are.
Commit to where you are in the moment, which allows you to commit to who you're with and what you're doing, and allows actual magic to unfold in the moment.
That is so beautiful for trust, because it's like you're like, okay, if I'm committing to where I am, then I'm trusting that my agenda or my timeline is like, maybe not quite the best possible thing for me. So it's just like, it's ultimate trust that like you're where you're meant to be.
Totally. And yeah, absolutely. And also with that, it's letting go of resistance. And it goes with emotions too, because when you commit to where you are and you let go of resistance, it's like, okay, I'm actually feeling sad today. Let me allow myself to be sad. And usually when we then allow ourselves to process it, it actually moves through us more quickly. We don't hold on to it after, which then clears our channel for more clarity and more creative downloads to come through.
So good.
So there's actually this beautiful photo of the emotional scale that I took a photo of it when I was in Ojai, which is this beautiful, magical spot outside of Los Angeles. And indifference is actually lower on the emotional scale than anger or sadness. Indifference and apathy. Because they're kind of like the dulled bottom emotion. So actually when you allow yourself to feel sadness, you move higher on the scale. When you allow yourself to feel grief, you move higher. When you allow yourself to feel anger, you move higher, which then eventually leads to, the top levels of like peace.
Wow.
So I always tell my clients it's good to have these emotional releases, like allow them to happen, because they're actually moving you forward. And I remind myself of that too. Like, to be honest with you, last night I led a breathwork class, and I've had like a very, busy week, which we'll talk about boundaries in a second.
Yes.
And after the breathwork class, I'm also in my, I'm about to start my period, so I always feel like more depressed and sensitive before that happens. And I came home from breathwork after just like leading people through their own experiences, and I was like, wow, I feel like depressed right now.
Wow.
And I went into I have a little meditation den. My boyfriend went to sleep, and I did my own breath work.
Wow.
I journaled 10 pages. I screamed into some pillows, and then I meditated and I was like, I don't know where this is coming from, but I know I need to just sit with this. And I felt so much better when I woke up this morning.
Wow. Yeah. Versus just pushing it away and going to bed and waking up just with that unresolved energy inside of you.
Totally. So yeah, on the emotional scale, indifference and apathy are below anger and sadness. And so because they're kind of suppressed, they're disconnected from us and our emotional compass. If you're feeling indifferent or apathetic, you're not feeling anything. And so when you allow yourself to feel sadness, grief, and anger, you actually move higher and higher on the emotional scale until then you can reach things like joy. And I actually believe that peace is higher than joy too, because it's just allowing yourself to move up through all the full spectrum of emotions to then get to this state of inner harmony and inner connectedness.
That was really good. Great. I would love to speak to boundaries, since you're talking about, you know, a time in your cycle, which is so important. I'm huge on cycle syncing, and like, you know, when I'm about to start my period, there's no way in hell I'm leading a breathwork class, right? Like, my boyfriend's on the same page. Everybody I know, like, I let them know, I'm like, hey, listen, right now, like, these first few days, like, I'm putting up a boundary. Like, I'm not going to be able to take care of other people. This is all about me. I maybe don't say it quite like that, but I lovingly will let people know, hey, like, I'm busy, or like, I'm not available for much right now for the next few days. Get back to me. So... And also, I've incorporated boundaries just so much, and I've seen it really work well for me. I would love to know how you think boundaries come into play when it comes to feeling better, spreading yourself thin. Like, does it feed your creativity? Is it draining for you to have boundaries? What's good for you?
Yeah. So, wow. I mean, there's like 4 hours of stuff we could say on boundaries, but for me, I've realized that boundaries are necessary for my creativity. And like I was talking about the feminine and masculine energetics before, completely feminine would be totally untethered, totally porous, available for anything, almost to and flow, and not able to get anything done. And a little bit of masculine, like providing a little bit of structure around it, allows you then to actually optimize your creativity. And so before, as a people pleaser, a recovering people pleaser, I would say yes to things when actually I didn't want to go, but I felt like I couldn't say no if I didn't have a valid excuse, rather than just being like, actually tonight I'd rather play guitar and go to bed by 9 p.m.
Right. And that's a simple thing. You don't have to play guitar, like, you know what I mean? But like, that's you should feel proud to just like say like, oh, I'm playing guitar and I'm going to bed by 9. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Totally. And it took a while for me to get there on my own. And now boundaries is actually a whole module I teach in my group coaching program, because it is so powerful, as you know. And it's, if we can't show up for ourselves, then even the things we do commit to, going back to committing to the present moment with others, part of us is going to be depleted. Part of us is not going to be fully there. Part of us is going to be wishing we were else there. So we're actually wasting their time too when we do say yes and when we don't have boundaries. And I like to say, and this is a motto that all my coaching clients, if anyone's listening, probably is like, can recite it now, is when we do what's best for ourselves, we do what's best for everyone.
Wow.
And I always like to use the airplane analogy of putting the oxygen mask on yourself first, because you need to put it on yourself first to then successfully put it on others. If you're trying to put it on others as you're losing oxygen yourself, you're going to pass out and then no one is helped.
Yes, and sometimes putting your oxygen mask on for yourself can look like a season where you don't show up for other people, and that's okay. Sometimes that season can be 6 months. Sometimes that season can be 1 week, right? Like, sometimes we really need to take more time than we realize to give ourselves that oxygen mask, you know? Like, it's, I feel like the whole boundary thing is interesting. It's like, you really you either implement them like crazy and you stick to them, or if you have like a flimsy boundary, people will run right over it.
Right.
They will just go right over it. And you're right. Like, it does create that masculine structure where like it almost creates like a more safe place for you to flow and be free and journey like where you want to go and use your creativity when you do have these boundaries up. So I think that that's absolutely beautiful. So Meredith, how can we start to allow ourselves to express and incorporate more creativity in our current lives now?
Yeah, so that's a great question. As kind of we were talking about boundaries, as we implement more boundaries, and a great way to do that, circling back to what we previously said about getting clear on at all the shoulds in our life, right? All the things that we feel like we should be doing, we don't actually want to be doing. I always start off with all of my clients doing a lifestyle audit, kind of like the Marie Kondo method of what clothes spark joy. thanking them for their service and clearing them out. And so I have them actually do that with the things that they're doing in their life, certain relationships in their life that are no longer serving them.
Wow.
And how they're wasting their own time with procrastination that can, show up in habitual ways like scrolling forever or just watching Netflix when they really want to be practicing piano, but there's resistance there. So firstly, we get rid of all of the shoulds and all of the habits they know they want to break, and there's a whole process to that. But then we also work on setting up those firm boundaries where they don't feel bad if they want to say no to something because they want to focus on themselves. Some people
it doesn't make you a bitch, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? But like
Totally.
I used to tell my clients, if you're afraid of sounding like a bitch, then embrace it and be a bitch.
Yeah.
Who cares?
Yeah. Totally. And actually, the funny thing is, people actually respect you more when you have firmer boundaries.
Totally.
And because you show people how to treat you.
Yes, you do.
And the higher we set our own value, the more people start to pay it. And one example I love to give, it's like if you're a house and you're worth $3 million and someone's like, oh, but I'll come in, pay you $1 million. And you're like, okay, great. Well, I guess here it is for $1 million.
Right.
You're not like, they're not going to be like, no, I know you're worth $3 million, so I'm going to pay you $3 million.
Right.
And so you have to be like, sorry, the price is $3 million, and I know someone else is going to come along who's going to be willing to pay it, but I know my property value and I'm not letting it down. So anyways, it's starting to value yourself and your own time that way to create that space for your creative projects. So once those boundaries are created and you give yourself more of an allowance of that, that's kind of step one, is the lifestyle audit and the boundary setting. And then step two is allowing yourself to exist in that gray area of having a beginner's mindset, of trying things that you're not going to be good at right away, of trying things that don't have a tangible success metric, especially because I work with a lot of high performers, high achievers who are used to what comes next, what's the next metric. When we start to incorporate creativity after we've established those boundaries, I actually encourage them to pick things where there's no success metric, where their first draft of something might be total shit, where the stakes are so low that they can just like throw the paint against the wall and see what happens.
Yeah. And it's a practice run.
And creativity, as Julia Cameron says, who wrote The Artist's Way, which is like every artist and creative's Bible, is creativity is like a muscle. And it's, people often say, oh, I wasn't born with creativity, I'm just not creative. And that's simply an excuse. Everyone has the opportunity to be creative. We all are the creative architects of our life. And that's just not taking ownership of, what fear or resistance you have to being fully seen or fully expressed in a certain area. Because it's like going to the gym, getting your reps in. If you get your reps in, you're going to get stronger. And it's that consistency over time that actually helps with creativity and helps with throwing things against the wall, seeing what sticks and being okay if they don't, and not letting your self-worth fluctuate either way.
Wow, so good, Mer. Okay, so two things I want to actually ask. Like, what are some examples of boundaries? I have a few. And then what are some examples of how we can ask for the boundary?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So there's a few different boundaries. Like a most obvious one would be like, boundaries with friends. Maybe you always feel like you want to say yes to things. And I remember in Venice, my good old friend Johanna was one of the first people who told me, oh, sorry, I can't do that tonight because I don't feel like it. And because I had just come from living in London where...
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Where everyone would just make elaborate excuses if they couldn't make, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And like, and just every other instance in my life. And I was like, at first I was like, what? And then I thought about it and I'm like, how fucking empowering that she's just like, that simply doesn't light me up tonight.
Oh my God.
And so that's, there's like really like nice tactful ways you can say those things. But like, firstly, I like to lead with acknowledgement. Thank you so much for thinking of me or inviting me to this. There are some things that I need to focus on, but I'll reach back out when the time is right, or you can set a date later in the future. Or if you don't even have space in your calendar for that relationship, like, thank you so much for reaching out to me. Now's a really crazy time for me. You
Wow.
don't need to lead.
No excuse.
With an excuse, yeah.
I'm busy doing this, or I've got to do that thing, or no. You can literally just say, I'm so sorry, but right now I don't have the space. Mm-hmm. That's so good. Okay, great.
Yeah, and I've told people, like, I appreciate you sharing that with me, and I don't have the emotional bandwidth right now to hold space for that.
Totally.
And it's one of those moments where you send it and you're like, but then afterwards you're like,
I just created more space for my creativity.
Yeah, exactly. Because when we set boundaries with ourselves and we execute on them, we actually build self-trust. Because that's showing your subconscious, like, I've got me.
Yeah.
And I trust me to do what I say I'm going to do what's best for me.
Yeah.
And in that self-trust, then it feeds into creativity. So yeah, a few personal boundaries I have with myself. I sleep with my phone outside my room.
It's a good one.
So I'm not instantly stimulated by like a million things when I wake up. I wake up to Alexa.
Yes, me too.
On my Echo Dot, and like every morning it's either Alexa, wake me up to Vance Joy or John Mayer.
I started waking up to Jack Johnson. Someone told me that they wake themselves up to banana pancakes, and now that like banana pancakes wakes me up every single day.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
It's great. But it's nice because you wake up and then like you can take your time. If you want to take 30 minutes to walk out to your room in the next morning, like then you can do that. You can read a book. You can just the slightest text will interrupt your flow. It's an energetic pull to somebody else's life.
Yeah, whether it's a text or looking at their life on Instagram, anything, someone emailing you for an ask. So yeah, that's like my sacred time in the morning is I don't check my phone until after I meditate and journal. That's a morning boundary. And I do the same in the evening. I put my phone away. I read a few pages and then I write in my 1 line a day journal, which captures everything I do each day for 5 years. Wow. So I can see exactly what I did this time last year and the year before, and tonight I'm going to write about Power Femme podcast for today. But yeah, so those are some personal boundaries, and then some structured time around like creativity and planning for my week on Sunday evenings. I try not to book client calls on Monday, so that can be a day of deep creativity. And just try to, as an entrepreneur, I'm blessed in being able to design my week a little bit more. But if you do have a traditional, job that you go into the workplace for, then I would say the first thing is, that morning and evening routine that you can dial in. Those relationships that are sucking energy, and, getting good sleep, because when we don't get good sleep and we're not, and we are sleep deprived, we become different people, and our creativity, our sense of self-trust, our sense of empowerment all go out the window.
Yeah. Wow, Mare, so good. So just with all of this talk around boundaries and noticing that, like, even as simple as having your phone in your room, right? Like someone sends you a message. Even it's just not enough to have your phone like on do not disturb, because you might check your phone. You know what I mean? So like if your phone is out of the room, it prevents that one person from texting you and you check your phone and you see, right? So like let's say somebody texts you and they're asking for something. And even if you set the intention of like, I'm not going to respond to them right away, seeing it and seeing what they want, that's an energy leak, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And so I would say that is an energy leak, and anything is an energy leak that you allow to stay in your mind that you could have taken care of.
Or that takes away from your present.
Takes away from the present moment. And so what I try to do on the days that I don't have calls or when I have big gaps of time, I call it my energy leak sealing days. So that's when I respond to the people that I've been forgetting to respond to. That's when I call my insurance company about this or set up my dentist appointment. And it's not something then that I do on like a Wednesday or Thursday when I should be deep in work about something else, but I'm like, oh, I'll just like seal this energy leak, and then it disrupts my entire day. So I like have like a dedicated time each week where I do all of this life admin.
Wait, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Because that gives you permission to not respond to people right away.
Totally.
Like, and then in that, you're actively prioritizing yourself. So if you have a philosophy with yourself where you're like, oh, I literally have like a day and time where I follow up with people who I didn't get back to right away, that's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is amazing, and it actually keeps my headspace so much more clear, because then you're not like in the middle of a conversation like, oh no, I need to respond to this person. Or if I forgot, then I just add it to my Notion page of like my energy leaks, or you can just, create something on your iPhone of like in your notepad of energy leaks, and just have a set date and time where you follow up with those people, where you make the admin life calls that you've been meaning to make, where you call that friend from back home that you've been meaning to catch up with, and just know that it's all happening on that day. So then you can just take it out of your head, put it there.
Follow up later. And
I call it sealing energy leaks, which by the way also helps build self-trust.
Yeah.
When you use them, when you're proactive about them on like a set day and have your own boundaries around them.
Yeah. Which if you're not feeling confident in your life, I think a great first place to look at is your self-trust. I think like just the foundation of confidence and happiness and like momentum comes from a deep knowing of, oh, I got my back. So like, where can you start to gain more trust for yourself in your life? I feel like it's as simple as, oh, if I say I'm going to make my bed every day, you actually make your bed every day. I had a client once tell me, oh yeah, like I was like, like, do you think that you can like, do this 12-week tone up, whatever. And she was like, oh yeah, I believe in myself. Like, I know I'm capable of it, but like, I just don't know if I believe myself. Like, I just don't know if I believe that I'm actually going to do this for 12 weeks. It's one thing to believe in yourself and believe yourself. So like, just start to look at those areas. Like, how can I start to like make little promises to myself that I can follow up on easily? And then you start to build that momentum, and then maybe you start to cut out, the larger things.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I like to say is like tiny shifts over time equal big changes. Yeah. Because if we try to do the biggest thing first and then it becomes overwhelming and we stop and we throw it away, then we damage our self-trust on being able to follow through on things. So start with something that's so tiny that you can integrate and incorporate as a mindless habit within like 3 or 4 weeks, like as habitual as brushing our teeth is. Like, I'm going to either leave my phone outside my room every morning, or I'm going to drink a glass of water every morning when I wake up. Just something that you can repeat over time, start to build that little trust muscle, and then start to add in some of the bigger things, because you'll feel like that muscle has gotten more and more and more practice.
Totally. You can't lift a 50-pound dumbbell before you lift a 5-pound dumbbell. You know what I mean?
Amen.
And
the last thing about that too is a really quick exercise that I give my clients sometimes, and that I do in my own morning meditation, whether or not you have a morning meditation practice. Even if you just take a deep breath and you say, what's something that I want to do today? And just trust whatever answer comes up. Like, what is my highest self tell me would feel really nourishing to do today? And then you do that thing. And that also builds self-trust, because you're then especially using your intuition. You're trusting in that answer that came up, and then you're actually acting on it. So that builds trust of, when I speak, I listen. And that brings everything back into integrity, as we were speaking about.
Let's pretend that you are on an elevator. Okay. I want you to imagine that you're on an elevator and you're going somewhere. And a little girl gets on. And it's just her. She's by herself. And you've got about 30 seconds to impart your wisdom on her. What would you say to this little girl? Like, if you just wanted her to know, like, okay, you got this. Or like, this is the one thing that this is the one truth that you should really know. Or like, tune out this noise. Like, listen to this. What would you say to her? And how would you want her to feel after having met you?
I would say that you are enough and that you are capable of doing anything that you want to do if you believe in yourself. And that everything is happening for you if you trust in yourself. And I'd want her to feel empowered, and I'd want her to really know that she has all of the tools, just by being as her as she possibly can, to create something magnificent in the world. Just what I would have loved little Meredith to know.
Yeah, that's perfect. I love that. You don't have to work harder. You just have to be more you.
Exactly. Amen to that.
We're going to get started on a whole nother podcast at the end of this podcast. Okay. Wow. Meredith, thank you so much for coming on the show. I love you. You're such a constant inspiration in my life, and I know so many others. If our listeners want to keep up with you, where can they find you?
They can find me at the Meredith Baker on Instagram, on TikTok. And my website is themeredithbaker.com. And then my experience company, More of That, we host events in LA. So if you live in LA or if you're ever visiting LA, it's at more.of.that.
It's amazing too. It's a company that inspires you to do more of the thing that you actually want to do in this world. So definitely check it out. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you next time. Oh my God, guys, I'm just lit up. I'm always lit up. I absolutely love having these conversations, and I love having you guys listen in with us. So please, if you have not already, leave us a review, a 5-star review at that. This is the best thing that you can do to support the Power Femme podcast. We want to get this out to as many powerful women as possible. So share this episode with your friends, share us on social media, and leave a review if you want to be featured on the podcast. I love you guys so much. It means the world to me that you're here. I will see you next time.